Hello fellow travelers and welcome to another episode of In-Depth Boss Guide series, where we take a closer look at the VAT's major threats. I'm too lazy to be awesome, and in this video I'll show you how to deal with Aleph, the Electro Hypostasis, also known as Electro Cube. As we already know, when we fight a hypostasis, we can only deal damage to its core, which is normally protected. The core will become exposed during or after certain attacks, but you still can attack the boss even if you can't reach the core to gain energy, stack buffs, or apply debuffs to prepare for the next opening. Core of Electro Cube is a pure electro energy, which makes it immune to electro damage, but instead you can easily trigger Overload with Pyro, Superconduct with Cryo, or Crystallize with Geo. Of course you can also trigger Electrocharged with Hydro and Swirl with Anima, but since those deal electro damage, there is not much use in it. Since fight is happening in the open air, it can be affected by weather. Thus, fighting Electro Hypostasis during rain might make the fight very annoying. Electro Cube deals electro damage, so during rain it will trigger Electrocharged, not only dealing additional damage over time, but also briefly staggering your character a couple of times in the next few seconds after being hit. But you can use wet status on the boss to deal more damage, or so I would like to say. But currently, despite the wet status, when you hit the core with elemental attacks, they will only react with electro. This might and probably will get fixed at some point, but as of today, you can't react with Hydro during rain, which means no Vaporize for Pyro and no Hydro-infused swirls for Animo. In other words, no free damage boosts for you this time. So if you are confident enough in your skills and can avoid boss attacks, rain makes no difference, but it's better to wait for it to stop if you are not so sure. Now, to make you more confident, let's start with learning what the boss can do and how to deal with it. Let's start with attacks we've already seen before, such as Clap. This attack is pretty simple, it's just a quick clap. The best way to deal with it is to use dashing iframes, simply don't panic and delay your dash. But if you don't feel confident enough about the timing, you can also just dash away to get out of range. After that, you will be able to damage the core. Another familiar attack is Missiles. Boss will hang in the air and launch 4 projectiles at you. During this attack, the core is exposed, so you can deal damage with ranged attacks. The best examples are archers, who can strafe in aiming mode and keep shooting, and mages, who can stay close and attack the core with normal attacks, using dashes to avoid projectiles. The core will fall down and stay exposed after the last missile as well, so you will still have your chance to hit it if you prefer close combat. One of the most used attacks is Rock, Paper, Scissors, or rather Rock, Scissors, Paper if you want to represent the order. This is a heavy-hitting combo in which every hit knocks you back, making dodging following hits harder. But if you avoid the rock part by dashing to the side, the rest of the combo will simply miss, since boss rotation capability between hits is very limited. Sometimes boss will stop after the first hit. You can easily tell if that's going to be the case because there will be no danger zone highlighting on the ground. In both cases, after the attack, the core will become exposed, but after cut version, opening will be significantly shorter as well. Next attack is Drill. Boss turns into a giant drill and moves in a straight line. This attack is quite devastating if you are unlucky to get caught in it, so you should get away from its path with a couple of dashes. Drill is rarely used by itself. Usually it is followed by missiles, but could be followed by single rock or the full combo as well. In any case, the core will become exposed afterwards. If it takes you more than 3 minutes to destroy the core, boss will cast Cage. It summons 8 pillars in quick succession, which form a cage around you with electro barriers between them. The area inside then will be consistently struck by lightning. Although it's not that hard to avoid these strikes, since Electro Cube exposes its core while it's holding the cage, it's better to not get caught in the first place and use this time to attack the core. You have several ways to avoid being trapped inside. With good reaction you can spot the first pillar and get out of the cage before boss summons the last one. But even if you got caught, you can escape by jumping over the barrier using climbable constructs or abilities that can lift your characters up in the air. The last and least efficient way to get out is to break one of the pillars. You can deal damage to them using Pyro, Cryo, Anima or Geo attacks. We'll get back to this later to discuss the best ways to do so. Sometimes boss also traps itself inside, and then it comes down to your skills in avoiding lightning strikes, so it's up to you to decide if you want to stay and deal damage or just wait it out in safety. Alternatively, you can use the fact that your attacks pass through electro barriers, so you are able to even attack the core from safety if you can reach it. Next attack is rotating lasers. Boss will start rotating with 8 small cubes around itself. Once these cubes move away from the core, 4 of them will fire laser beams forming a cross pattern. There is no way to predict which set of 4 cubes will do that, so it's safer to stay closer and keep yourself in between the cubes before you can see the lasers. You can then dash through them or hide behind constructs to avoid damage, but it's better to go inside the circle. It's not only safe there, but also you can damage the core during this attack. After a few seconds, cubes will stop firing lasers and converge around the core, dealing massive damage, so make sure to leave before that. Just before the attack stops, you can notice the circle on the ground disappearing, so it's easy to see when you should fall back. Another big area attack is tremors. Boss will send small waves in all directions, which deal damage if you touch them. To avoid the damage you can dash through or jump over the waves, block them with constructs, or just hang out in the air for a while if you're too lazy like me. Also, you can maneuver in between the waves, which seems to be easier if you stand far away from the boss. But if you look at the pattern, you can see that it's possible to do so staying closer as well. Why would we go for such risk? Because after the waves stop, the core will become exposed, and the closer you are, the sooner you will be able to attack it. Once you drop Electro Hypostasis down to critically low HP, it will enter the revival phase, called Rebirth. It will create 3 electro prisms around itself, and you will have 15 seconds to deal with them. If you can't destroy them all, boss will revive, restoring HP depending on the number of prisms left. Previously destroyed prisms won't appear again the next time you trigger Rebirth. The only way to defeat the boss is to destroy all of them. To do so, you have to attack them with Pyro, Cryo, Animo or Geo, with first 2 being twice more efficient. In this case, your stats or damage don't matter. What matters is how strong the attack's elemental application is. In order to understand it, let's start with an example. Each prism has 6 points of durability. If Sucrose attacks it with normal attack, she applies 1 unit of Animo and removes 1 HP. If Yanfei does the same, she applies 1 unit of Pyro, and since Pyro is more potent in this case, Prism loses 2 HP. But some skills are even more powerful. For example, Bennett's skill applies 2 units of Pyro, which means he deals 4 damage to a prism in a single hit. If you're interested in more theory about that, I'll leave the link in the description where you can find it. But here, let's just take a look at some generally good examples. So obvious picks are Pyro Mages or Cryo Mages, if they ever become a thing. With their normal attacks, they deal 2 damage to a prism, but we've seen already that frequently hitting attacks, such as normal attacks, have internal cooldown that prevents them from dealing damage with each hit, so instead of focusing prisms one by one, the better strategy is to switch between them with each attack. This way, you will easily destroy all 3 of them. Another good option is Ember. Unlike most of the archers, her charged attacks apply 2 units of Pyro, which means she destroys each prism in just 2 hits. Yoimiya works similar because of her additional projectiles, and since they target random enemies, sometimes you can even deal damage to several prisms at once. And of course Ganyu applies Cryo twice with her fully charged shots, so she's also a great option. Also, Pyro and Cryo skills with multiple hits and decent duration work great, like Kaya's Burst. Although it has an internal cooldown, combining it with his skill is enough to quickly destroy all of the prisms. Xiangling also can destroy them with just her burst. Last thing I want to mention is about Ayaka. Her alternate sprint ability applies cryo when she reappears, and despite dealing no damage, still damages Electro prisms, because in this case only elemental application matters. In combination with her cryo infusion she gets afterwards, she also makes short work of these prisms. There are obviously a lot more good options and more sophisticated ways to destroy the prisms, but it would take a lot of time to go through them all, so feel free to experiment yourself and leave a comment if you have more interesting suggestions or questions, and I'll try my best to answer. Anyway, I hope you got the idea, so let's jump straight to the next part. Now let's try to summarize what we've learned to decide how characters perform when it comes to fighting Electro Cube. Common thing for Hypostasis is the immunity to their respective element, which is why it's better to not use Electro characters for this fight, and instead it's better to bring Pyro or Cryo characters, not only because they will deal a lot of additional damage with free reactions throughout the fight, but also because you have to destroy Electro prisms in the end to defeat the boss, and both of those are very good at that. Hydro and Animo characters will be less useful than usual, since their respective reactions with Electro deal Electro damage, which boss is immune to. But if you are okay with it, you can still use them if you want to. Geo has just slight bonus of easily getting Electro Shield, which is more effective against Electro attacks. But since you can avoid all of them anyway, it doesn't really make a difference. As for characters who rely mostly on physical damage, I'd say they have a small boost here due to much easier way to trigger superconduct. Against Electro Hypostasis you just have to attack it with Cryo, so for such characters it will become pretty much constant damage boost. When it comes to weapons, the only thing that makes a difference is that you can attack the core with ranged characters during Missiles cast or through Electro barriers during Cage, giving them just a small advantage. Other than that, it doesn't really matter what weapons you're going to use, so it's all up to you this time. There are no specific characters who would really stand out, but I will repeat this again. Do bring something to destroy Electro prisms in the end. You simply cannot win otherwise. Also, Electro Cube doesn't give you much time to attack the core, so it's better to rely on characters with high burst damage capabilities. With that in mind, you should have much easier time fighting Electro Cube. Now let's look at the things game considers as challenging. There are 3 achievements related to Electro Hypostasis that you can earn. For the first achievement you have to destroy all 3 Electro prisms during a single revival phase. I've already explained what could give you advantage and speed up the process, and which characters work great here. Each of those options allow you to destroy all of the prisms in a single phase, so just take your pick. And don't forget that co-op is also an option. For the second achievement you should get hit by all 3 parts of Rock Paper Scissors attack. In order to succeed with this one, you have to keep few things in mind. First, you can't die or switch characters in the progress, and you can't rely on iframes to avoid damage. As the text says, one character should get hit by these attacks. Although it doesn't say anything about surviving these hits, as far as I know, if you die even from the last hit, you won't get the achievement. Second, since you have to make sure you survive, there are several ways to help you with that without any additional farming at all. Using Geo characters will allow you to get an Electro Shield from Crystallize, which is very effective against Electro attacks. Alternatively, you can create an Electro Shield or at least Geo Shield directly with certain abilities. Also, you can use Sincho for his rain swords to reduce taken damage and add some healing. And don't forget that you can gain survivability bonuses from elemental resonance effects as well. Last thing, the best way to succeed is to stand in the center of the first AoE and just chill. Although sometimes hits can still miss for various reasons. Most of the time, boss will do all the work for you and all 3 hits will land perfectly, so you just have to survive the damage. For the last achievement, you have to destroy the barrier formed during cage attack. In order to do so, you have to break one of the pillars holding it. Destroying pillars is similar to destroying electro prisms in the end. Each pillar has 9 HP, and just as prisms, they only take damage if you apply Pyro, Cryo, Anima or Geo to them, with Pyro and Cryo being twice efficient. Also, you can't lock onto the pillars themselves, which means if you try to attack them near the core, your characters will try to hit it instead. So the best setup is to get out of the cage first to not be distracted by lightning strikes, then try to hit a pillar that is far enough from the core using attacks you can easily aim with. You can use the same characters which you would use to destroy electro prisms, but since this time you are dealing with a single target with higher HP which you can't lock onto, mages won't work so well. One amazing combo I can point out instead for this task is Chongyun with another melee character of any of 4 mentioned elements with reliable skill. Chongyun's skill applies 2 units of cryo on cast, plus you can apply 1 unit of cryo with infused attacks, so he alone is capable to quickly deal 2/3 of required damage. These infused attacks have cooldown, but it's not shared between different characters. Thus, switching to another melee character with their skill usage and 1 more normal attack if necessary, you can destroy a pillar in just a couple of seconds. That's all I have for you this time, fellow travelers. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll have a nice day and I'll see you in the next one.